Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky. And we're back with another Action Force annual this week, talking about the British adventures of our favorite fighting force. Everyone, this is the cool annual with the Conquest X30 on the front with Slipstream. There's 3 Conquests. I don't know who's piloting the other 2, but certainly is Slipstream piloting this one. It's coming forward on the nose, and 2 of them flying off in the background. So if you've got your Action Force annuals, they don't necessarily list them by year, at least on the spine. You do have to go into the indicia to see, but this is the blue one with Action Force. We've been having a lot of fun with Action Force these last few weeks. For those new to the program, this is the show where we've covered all the cartoons for G.I. Joe. We've covered Sunbow DIC Extreme, and I've done all of the Marvel Comics G.I. Joe issues. I need to circle back to Special Missions. I think I've said that 100 times. I promise you all I will. And we talked G.I. Joe. Been doing it for, I think, 8 years now. It's crazy. So I think 2024 is celebrating our 8th year. So I really appreciate everyone that's been on board this whole time, and those who have come and gone, and those who have just recently arrived. You guys are the best. If you want to help the show out, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod. Send me an email to joeonjoepod@gmail.com. That's your direct line to a good time, really, to borrow a phrase from the great Johnny B. And if you really want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/joeonjoe and help the show grow, man. We've got multiple levels. You can help support it, and that keeps the doors running, keeps the streams flowing. And we'll be helping a project that we're working on for later this year when Cobra Convergence returns this summer. I've got some inspiration. I got an inspirational billboard in my office corner right here that's starting. Right now I have one lone taped up inspirational image, and I can't wait to fill it in with more as the project comes to fruition. I'm so excited for it. Now it's just a matter of actually doing it. So that's always the hard part, right? You know, in the past we've done G.I. Columbo, we've done Cold Slither Band The Rock. We did last summer was Frost Destro. So Cobra Convergence is always fun, and everyone who celebrates it and participates is always great. Big shout out to Hooded Cobra Commander for organizing that every year. I also want to give a big shout out to our sponsors, the Movies in a Meal podcast. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these 2 primal needs into the Movies in a Meal podcast. The Movies in a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These 3 friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews. They do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies in a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies in a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. So the biggest thing I got this week, literally the biggest thing I got, is the G.I. Joe, the Art of G.I. Joe Omnibus from the 3D Joes, our friends over at Carson Metaxas and our friends over at 3D Joes. This is an amazing piece of artwork. I believe it's like 788 pages. It's over 700 pages. It is 18 pounds. I know I shared some pictures on Instagram. I saw a lot of you guys putting it up on Twitter. It is such an impressive book. We're going to have more to say on that in the coming weeks. But I spent 2 hours just going through 1982. So there's so much knowledge in there, but also pretty pictures, very pretty pictures. This is going to sound real dumb and Luddite. And it's one of those things I think I knew or intrinsically knew, but I never really realized it until I was looking at them in such high res, really blown up in your face side by side is how much the starbursts, bomb bursts, whatever you want to call them, behind the Joes, that how much they really reflected on the character themselves, like how they were a intrinsic part of the pose of that character for that singular card. The style was the same, but they were not cookie cutter. They were custom made for each one of the Joes, at least, early on. I feel like later on they might have gotten a little more cookie cutter, but like the early ones, those bomb bursts, the yellows and the reds and stuff, they're really form fitting and accentuating the actions of the figure. So it's just great. That's one of the many, many insights you're going to get out of that book. So it's really great. I hope everyone kickstarted it. I know it's available for purchase and stuff, but again, more on that to come in the weeks to come. But it's great. That was my big G.I. Joe news for the week. I don't think there was anything crazy. So without further ado, let's jump into this Action Force Annual 1990. Nice looking cover. It actually, I believe it's airbrushed. It looks airbrushed. It's cool. I like it. It's simple and straightforward. Blue background denoting sky. It's not trying for any like realistic sky portrait. I like it. It comes up, slipstreams firing some missiles at some people. Works for me. The inside cover is great. The inside is just a big 2-page spread of Serpentor punching his fist through. I feel like it's the Action Force logo. It looks like it's not really, it's the stars and stripes for sure, but it looks like it's the red, white, and blue bar with a star over it, which I feel like it's great, but it's a giant Serpentor putting his fist through it. Don't know who the artist is on it, but I like it. And inside this book, which sold for £3.99 was it pounds and pence or whatever, but it's $3.99 in pounds. And recruited from the very best of the world's military action forces, task is to fight evil and defend human freedom against the terrorist activities of Cobra, a secret army of anti-establishment criminal subversives. So this annual, it includes reprints of 2 stories. Trade-Offs, which was in the J. Joe Yearbook 4, and then an absolute classic fan favorite, My Dinner with Serpentor, which is like Serpentor's origin. I think that was from Yearbook 3. Really, really great. Nice Larry Hama art, or Larry Hama writing, Herb Trimpe art. And then I forget who drew Dinner with Serpentor. But the one neat thing that this issue does have that, like last issue, I don't believe had, memory is serving me. Oh man, Mike Zeck did the artwork in Dinner with Serpentor. That's right. It's so good. Apologies. What this issue has is they've got some fun games and stuff, like crosswords, things of that nature. The kind of fun little things like Know Your Enemy. You go here on page 28. There's shadow outlines of various vehicles from G.I. Joe and Cobra that you can identify. There's there's Conquest X-30, the Tomahawk, the Killer Whale, the Cobra Hiss, the boat, the Cobra cigarette boat. Why am I blanking on that? And then the Cobra, I think that's the Mamba. And for the cigarette boat, for some reason, my brain is only the word Night Raven is only in my head, but obviously that's the Night Raven. The Mamba. Yeah, no, that is the Mamba. The Cobra Hydrofoil. So the Cobra Hydrofoil never had a name? That's interesting. Hold on. No. Okay. So the Cobra Hydrofoil, that's weird. I think, did the Cobra Hydrofoil ever have a name? Found it, of course. Cobra Moray. Yeah. The Moray is what it was on my tip of my tongue there. So it's the Moray. So that's cool. So it's a fun little game. Later on, there's a crossword puzzle. If you skip over to page 35, there's some covert code names, crossword puzzle. The Russian, it's like the clues are like the Russian assault rifle. 2 would be the October Guard. Russian assault rifle, off the top of my head, is that the Kalishnikov? 3, the bad guys, that'd be Cobra. 4, the whale pilot is Cutter. 5, Lieutenant Falcon's favorite weapon. Shotgun? No, that's not it. Oh, sorry. I don't know. Lieutenant Falcon's, this is off the top of my head. A Cobra robot or small furry flying creature. That'd be a bat. 7, Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes, and Jinx are ninjas. 8 would be a very evil lady indeed. I imagine that's the Baroness. Baroness, yep, it appears to be. 9, Action Forces Field Commander. So that's probably Hawk. Yeah, it's got to be Hawk or Duke, but I imagine it's Hawk. The Mekong Delta. And 11 is who is, quote, an amalgamation of history's greatest military minds. Of course, that's Serpentor. So you go to Kalishnikov, I was correct. 5 across. Lieutenant Falcon's favorite weapon. They call it Stoner? What is that? I don't even understand what that means. Seriously. What is a stoner? I'm not, you know what I'm saying. I know what a stoner is. That's weird. I mean, that must be an Action Force thing. That must be a British phrase for something. That's really funny. But yeah, we got everything else. And then the in the middle of it all, the letters are supposed to spell something that you're then yellow boxes and rearrange them into the name. Oh, and then you rearrange the names that are in the yellow, so the letters actually they spell out Leatherneck. There's also some intelligence profiles in here. We'll save those for next week. And and then there's a Spot the Difference game. Page 44. 2 pictures may look the same, but there are 10 differences in picture B. See if you can spot them. This is really great for podcasting. But yeah, there's some differences. And you know how those things work. You look at them, you figure out what they omitted. Nothing crazy. There's lots of camo and lots of belts on this page. Anyway, so yeah, otherwise, it's a standard Action Force annual. A lot of fun. Today, the story we're reading is called Rogue Delta. It is written by fan favorite Dan Abnett, and we've got some artwork by John Marshall and Nick Abadzis, 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 and coloring by Steve White. I like these pictures a lot, actually. They're pretty good. One of the pictures is used for the what's missing in the back of the book, but they're pretty solid. I actually like the rendering on it, like the hatch work on it, I think is pretty solid. There's a picture of Jinx at the end though that her arm looks really crazy and weird. But also the original drawing, it's got Gung Ho. Spoiler alert, Gung Ho's in this. That drawing with Gung Ho is really cool too. So, and the fact that it's using the word rogue, it's Rogue Delta. It harkens for me when I think of Rogue, I think of not X-Men, but like British comics. Was it Rogue Trooper? So I feel like Dan Abnett wrote that, or some, it's influenced by British comics. So that's kind of cool. I feel like that's a definite nod here. Yeah. So we're going to get into it. Minimal accents this week, guys. Probably not going to hit those too hard. And, here we go. No one gave the old beggar a second glance as he hobbled down the streets of Ho Chi Minh City. He wandered through the throngs of the Vietnamese fishermen as they closed their stalls for the night. Bent nearly double with chronic rheumatism, he passed beneath the warehouse arches, clutching a bundle of bamboo fishing poles wrapped in oilcloth. Beyond the smell of rotten sprats, 4 big Western limousines, out of place in this squalor, sat parked under the open rafters, their occupants milling cautiously in the gloom. This evening, the fish market was playing host to a meeting. Lu Chen and Feng Lo ruled adjoining sections of the city waterfront through the iron vice of the black market. Tonight, they were meeting to discuss differences in territory. Out of sight in the shadows of an archway, the beggar squatted down and unwrapped his oilcloth bundle. If anyone had given him a second glance, they would have seen strong hands lift out a cut-down M16 with its barrel-mounted grenade launcher, lock a noise suppressor to the muzzle, and load up a clip of 5.56 millimeter ammunition. I feel like a suppressor on a grenade launcher. Seems like useless. In the warehouse, Lu Chen and Feng Lo had just finished with their pleasantries and had begun to talk business when the hurricane overwhelmed them. Feng Lo's Cadillac blew up to fragments as a grenade hit it, the blast knocking all present flat. Bodyguards, quick enough to react, threw their bodies in front of the masters and turned short bursts of automatic fire into the shadows. Wood chips and dust poured from the rafters. The bodyguards ceased fire and rose to seek out the gunned-down body of the unseen bomber. But they were greeted by a ghastly series of mechanical spitting noises. Somewhere, a silenced M16 fired a series of utterly selective, utterly accurate shots. Another car erupted in flames. The last few bodyguards sprawled on the tiled floor. Feng Lo and Lu Chen found themselves cowering together, terrified, alone, amid the fallen men, spent shells, and burning wrecks. The destroyer walked calmly out through his handiwork. Fear gripped the two taipans as they watched his approach. He stopped before them and spoke in capable accent Vietnamese. You two are part of the evil of this city, but I'm here to learn from you, so I'll spare your miserable lives. The terrorist squad that has struck 6 times on this coast in the last month, the ones they call Hades. Who runs them? Where do they come from? Not that, gasped Lu Chen. We cannot. But he faltered as he noticed the insignia on the American's cap, and a greater terror filled him. It was the badge of Action Force, the famous international anti-terrorist organization. He had never heard of them striking like this. So like the terrorists, they were meant to stop. Hades are from outside, he began. They do not work for the Taipans. They come from out there, the Delta. You all know why we've been pushed out here on such short notice, and the reason stinks, remarked Action Force Commander Hawk to the personnel around him. We've got a rogue operative running mad down here, and he's got to be pulled in pronto. Anxious murmurs ran through the 10 Action Force team members who were assembled in the dim conference room of the British Embassy, Ho Chi Minh City. Now listen up, said Hawk. Vietnam is usually out of bounds to Action Force terrorist activities here, and they've had some rough ones in the last few months. These are handled usually by the government itself or by the UN-appointed go-betweens. 12 hours ago, I was informed that one of our own operatives had gone absent without leave, and shortly after that, I was told that a soldier answering his description had started a small war in the local fish market. After a lot of talking, I managed to get to the authorities to give us 72 hours to find him and pull him back. After that, they'll do it. I needn't remind you that we look after our own. Well, so who is it? Which crazy son of a gun have we got to go and bust for running rogue, boss? The question came from Vietnam War veteran Leatherneck, the tough Marine who was clearly uncomfortable about returning to the city he had known as Saigon. This is where it's going to hurt, said Hawk. The team shifted uneasily. He was born Etienne Lafitte. You all know him better as Gung Ho. Bum, 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 bum. You're crazy, exploded Wild Bill, the chopper pilot. Gung Ho served with Roadblock Leatherneck and me in the Nam. He's the wildest, maddest jarhead ever, but he'd never go AWOL. He'd never go rogue on us. But he has, Bill. I'm sorry. Hawk's eyes begged for calm from the angry team members. And the service record of you three is one of the reasons I pulled you down here. You know the territory, and you know the man. Close, thought Hawk. I nearly said, target. He handed out some blurred photographs. These stills were taken during a terrorist raid that happened just down the coast a week ago. Gung Ho was assessing them just before he went AWOL. The terrorists seem to be Americans, dressed like GIs. They're known as Hades. I believe something in these photographs has brought Gung Ho out here. So we've got the beginnings of motive. How do we deploy? Asked Lieutenant Falcon, Hawk's second in command. Gung Ho was last seen heading out into the Delta in a motor launch. A retrieval team will follow his route in the Whale hovercraft. I'll lead the team with Cutter piloting, Jay is my number 2, and Roadblock and Tunnel Rat riding shotgun. The respective operatives nodded in understanding. We will be Hunter Team. The second team will cover us in the Tomahawk. They'll be ready to pull us out or give us backup at a moment's notice. Codename Backstop. Falcon will lead, lift ticket piloting, Wild Bill as advisor, with Leatherneck, Jinx, and Lifeline as gunners. All clear? Let's go. Gung Ho yawned and eased the throttle of the motor launch he had, quote, borrowed from the quay side in Ho Chi Minh City. He pulled a small tape recorder from his flak jacket pocket, thumbed the record key, and set it on the cabin dash by his side. He cleared his throat and began to speak. Statement of Etienne Lafitte, Action Force Operative MC56488390, codename Gung Ho. In case anyone gets around to hearing this, I want to state here that I'm doing this for personal reasons, not on behalf of Action Force. I realize what I'm doing is illegal under international law, and I take full responsibility for my actions. He paused and then went on. I hope you're hearing this, Hawk. I want to apologize to you in particular, because you must think I'm letting you down a lot. I can only say that what's making me do this is a much older loyalty. Times have changed, names too. Saigon has become Ho Chi Minh City. Etienne Lafitte has begun Gung Ho. But there is so much about this place that is still the same, the danger, the fear. The Delta. Gung Ho sighed. Look, I don't know how much tape I've got left, so I'll keep it brief. I was last in the Mekong Delta in '72, carrying an M60 in support of the good old Orpheus Air Cav, the 45th Airborne Cavalry. The boys in Orpheus were my family, long before Action Force. We lived together as a family. I thought we'd die that way. My tour of duty ended when the Viet Cong downed my chopper over the Delta. I was the only one who survived. I was told that the rest of Orpheus were listed as missing in action. Imagine the shock you must feel when, having adjusted to the fact that 30 of your closest friends were dead, you see them again after a decade on a blurry intelligence film of suspected terrorists. I only saw it by chance and I've no way of explaining it, but the terrorist squad known as Hades is composed almost entirely of my Orpheus brothers. Bum, bum, bum. I followed the clues given to me by Taipans in Ho Chi Minh City. They said Hades came from the Delta. Apparently there's a community of smugglers fairly near where I am now who should have more information. I'm sorry, Hawk, and all you others, forgive me. Gung Ho switched off the tape, studied the water-choked strands of trees ahead faintly. Gung Ho could hear another engine. The armored motor launch leapt out of the reeds in an explosion of spray. There was no mistaking them or their intent. River pirates, smugglers, waiting to rob any watercraft that wandered into the stretch of the Mekong. Before the pirate launch had even cleared the reeds, Gung Ho had to smile on his face and a law rocket launcher on his shoulder. Far Thon, leader of the river pirates, was not at all happy. Aside from his own 17-meter armored command boat, he had at his command 8 armed motor launchers and a trio of Huey helicopter gunships. Even the river police and army steered clear of him. Thus, he was not happy about the story being related to him by Sin Cho, a launch commander he had just hauled from the water next to the burning wreck of one of his motorboats. A madman! An American! Sin Cho exclaimed. He smiled as we began to board him and rob him. Then he attacks us, on his own, a wild man, a slaughterhouse. A slaughterhouse? Asked Farthon. And you're still alive? For what reason, Sin Cho? Because I told him what he wanted to know, sir. Which was, Sin Cho? The whereabouts of the Hades killers. Farthon frowned. The Hades killers were the only things he and his men feared. They knew little about them except that they were based deep in the area of the Delta wasteland known as the Dead Waters. Well, if he is looking for Hades, he is indeed a bad man. He remarked, and your motor launch is on fire for what reason, Sin Cho? Rocket launcher, sir. A well-armed madman. Let's forget him. He'll be dead soon if he goes looking for Hades. Go and get dry, Sin Cho. The chopper scouts reported a large hovercraft coming this way. Much richer, safer pickings. No mad Americans with rocket launchers. Get everybody to launch to ambush positions. Get the hovercraft for me, Sin Cho, and I'll forget about the launch you just lost. Riding on its air cushion, the 8-ton whale hovercraft surged across the thick waters of the Delta at nearly 30 knots. In the cockpit, Huck turned to the pilot cutter and yelled, "No sign of anything out there. It's as quiet as the grave." From the lower cabin, Jay clambered under the cockpit, removing our audio sensor headset. We've been echo bouncing about a half dozen contacts ahead of us in the reed beds for the last 2 minutes. Could be trouble. Hawk yelled into the shipboard tannoy. I don't know what a tannoy is, but there you go. Positions, everyone. Possible trouble ahead. Tunnel rat. Roadblock. Man the turrets and get ready to uncover the chain guns. If the shooting starts, Jay, stand by to arm our launchers and depth charge racks. I don't want anyone to know we're an armed military outfit unless it's necessary. Meanwhile, have you seen the killer whale? Okay. Hawk thumbed up the buttons of the radio mic. Hunter to backstop. Be advised we are expecting trouble up ahead. Stand by to give security cover on the code word payback. Over. Backstop to Hunter. We copy loud and clear. Hawk, yelled Cutter, but his boss had already turned to look. The large motor launch had come leaping out of the rushes, prow up as it raced along the whale. On board, 3 scuffy Vietnamese warriors gestured threateningly at Hawk and Cutter with the Kalashnikov assault rifles. A 4th thug manned a tripod-mounted M60. Heave to and be boarded, yelled one of the pirates in broken French, and then added, let us come aboard, or you have number 10 bad time, in even more broken English. Back off and let us pass, yelled Hawk. They don't understand you, said Jay, taking up a place in the cockpit at his side. Let me, and get ready to back me up with a little more than words. Jay leaned out of the cockpit, smiled sweetly, and bellowed something in fluent Cambodian at one of the pirate gunners. He looked shocked. Then hot fury flew across his face, and he swept up his AK-47 to fire. A single shot from Hawk's long slide 45 pistol blew him out of the boat. Cutter hauled Hawk and Jay into the depths of the armored cockpit as his three companions blasted the whale with a broadside of automatic weapons fire. Hundreds of rounds bounced uselessly off the whale's thickly armored hull. Roadblock, tunnel rat! You have permission to return fire, ordered Hawk down the companionway. The two troops made no verbal answer, but deftly swept off the tarp covers of their turret weapons, slewed back the bolts, and let rip with a deafening salvo of large caliber cannon shells. Through the cockpit porthole, Hawk saw the pirate launch explode and shower the water with countless slivers of debris. Stay sharp. There's bound to be more, Cutter. Cutter, take us down the channel fast. Hawk turned to Lady J, who was arming the missile fire control. Jay, just what did you say to him? She smiled back. His father, hippopotamuses, that sort of thing. Launches. 3 ahead and coming, yelled Tunnel Rat. They're firing grenades at us, cried Cutter as the whale rocked underneath the nearby blasts. Nothing we can't handle, replied Hawk. Roadblock, Tunnel Rat, the left launch is yours. We'll take the rest. The pirate launches suddenly broke formation as the whale surged through the space between them. Crossing the bows of startled boats, Roadblock's twin cannons raked from one end to end with a thunderous volley. His shots obviously touched off the pirates' grenade supplies, because in an instant the launch was engulfed in billowing fire. The other two launches turned on the hovercraft's wake, blasting away. Well, they seem to be driving us towards something, growled Cutter. There's too much cover ahead. I know. Pull round on my word. We'll take the launches with a bracket shot, replied Hawk. Cutter spun the whale around as 4 anti-armor missiles erupted from their rack on the hovercraft's deck, spat across the water at 0 feet, and destroyed the 2 launches in one spectacular and blistering blossom of fire. Cutter's cheer of success becomes a cry of alarm as they saw the heavily armored cruiser bearing down on them, flanked by 3 more armed launches. Then, from behind a nearby tree stand, the 3 pirate Hueys swooped around at treetop height amid the rattle of miniguns. Turn and run, ordered Hawk. I'll call backstop to pull us out. Jay, give the boats the last of the missiles to chew on. The whale came about and made off with the launches, and the choppers in close pursuit. The water around the whale churned under the gunfire, its armor ringing like cymbals. Jay fired the last brace of anti-armor rockets as a parting kiss. They obliterated one launch and flipped another onto the seething water. But the massive fire power of the cruiser and the choppers would soon tear open the whale's thick hide. Unseen by all the combatants in the deadly chase, the double-rotor Action Force Tomahawk hurtled into the fray from behind Farthon's cruiser, responding to Hawk's code word, payback. At the stick, Lift Ticket turned to his co-pilot Wild Bill, who was arming the fire control systems. I can't take it much lower without hitting the cruiser's spray. You ready? Whenever you are, sang out Wild Bill. Let's rock. Lift Ticket switched to the cabin mic. Falcon, I'm about to cross the stern of the pirate cruiser as low as I dare. Then I'll drop behind the Hueys and give Wild Bill a chance to play with their air-to-air missiles and chin turret. You ready? Falcon's voice crackled back. Go, Lift Ticket. Leatherneck, Jinx, and I are braced to drop. The Tomahawk surged over the rear end of the speeding cruiser. As its shadow flickered across the boat, Falcon, Jinx, and Leatherneck hurled themselves onto the cruiser's engine housing. Falcon and Leatherneck rolled to their feet and leveled their suppressive stoner M63s in defensive attitudes. That's what a stoner is. Jinx, a red ghost in her scarlet ninja suit, glided down the guardrail towards the cruiser's cabin, the razor-bladed katana sword held ready. Follow her, barked Falcon over the noise, and plug anything else that moves, twitches, or coughs. Leatherneck chuckled as he scrambled forward. Just my style. Farthon was surprised as a shadow blotted out the sun, and anger rose even more swiftly as a large military chopper rocketed overhead and dropped in behind his 3 thundering Hueys. Pirate flight, he bellowed into his radio. Watch your tails. In the Tomahawk, Wild Bill triggered the massive minigun in the chin turret below the cockpit. Always check your 6, you guys, he remarked as one of the Hueys came apart in midair, raining shrapnel on the water below. The other 2 Huey pilots were obviously shaken by the disappearance of their colleague. One decided to break right, the other low and left. One lost his rotors on the other's landing struts. The rotorless chopper fluttered into the water like a broken clockwork toy. The other, trailing debris and smoke from his underside, banked across the swampland to escape. Lift Ticket banked in pursuit. It took only a moment for Wild Bill to align their air-to-air missiles and take out the last Huey. On the cruiser's bridge, Farthon screamed in rage as the battle turned against him. "Are those missiles ready, fools? Fire them, fire them!" In reply, Farthon's massive missile gunner flew through the air past him, smashed through the cabin window, and disappeared overboard. Farthon turned, as did his other crewmen. A red-clad nightmare with a sword was swinging in the cabin towards them. Farthon's chief engineer tried to raise his Kalashnikov in time. In a blur, the ninja's blade cut through the barrel. The sword hilt connected with his forehead. Wow. And a stunning blow. Oh, it's only the hilt, though. For a second, I thought she was slicing his head in half. And a mantis kick to the sternum sent him flying. Another pirate sprang forward, knife in hand, from the ninja's left. The sword whistled again. The cruiser's pilot knew he was far enough away from the red whirlwind to draw and fire his magnum revolver. He had barely aimed it when a silenced, high-velocity round blasted him to the deck. Framed by the cabin windows, Leatherneck and Falcon had the remaining pirates in their sights. "Nobody move, please," smiled Falcon politely. Farthon opened his mouth speechlessly. In another deadly blur, Jinx spun at him, pushing him back against the wall. She had her left foot braced against his chest, the tip of the katana at his fat throat. "Hello," she said softly from behind her veil. "Met anyone else unusual this morning?" The whale bobbed alongside the now stationary pirate cruiser, the Tomahawk hovering softly overhead. Stepping from the cruiser's cockpit, Falcon hailed Hawk, who was coming on board. "They ran across Gung Ho this morning, all right," he asked questions about Hades, and then made off. He asked questions about Hades, then made off. Well, what did they tell him? What did they tell anyone who asked? Hades are death, and they live on an island deep in the area of the delta called the Dead Waters. Hawk frowned. Why the name? Apparently, it's a wasteland, badly polluted by defoliant chemicals during the war. Not a nice place to visit. Well, great. We get all the best jobs. Get your people back aboard the Tomahawk and follow us. Hawk paused as he turned away. "Oh, Falcon, sir. Congratulate your team on a very effective piece of support." "Thank you, sir. And Falcon, may I just state for the record that I do not recommend leaping from the chopper onto the deck of a moving motor cruiser as approved tactics?" Falcon put a hand to his ear. "Say again, sir? I can't quite hear you over the noise of this Tomahawk." The dead waters washed about Gung Ho's launch raft, a rotting, silent, lifeless waste. It seemed to him the ideal place to uncover the truth about such a shocking mystery. The chopper saw him before he saw it. It came out of the east, circling his boat, a big American troop-carrying helicopter. Heavy machine guns trained upon the lone Marine. The chopper had no markings. Gung Ho's radio crackled. He pulled down the mic. "State business," came the terse question in English. Gung Ho paused, considered the various answers he could give, and the various responses that they might cause. "I'm looking for Hades. I want to join." "Tall order," crackled the response. "I'm looking for Hades," continued Gung Ho desperately, "and I'm looking for Orpheus." Silence from the radio then. "Well, depending on how sick that last joke was, brother, you'll die quickly or slowly. Catch the rope." A cable snaked down from the chopper. Gung Ho caught it and wrapped it around his torso. As he was lifted up, he could see his abandoned boat rolling below in the downwash of the chopper's rotors. Strong hands pulled him through the hatch. Strong men in fatigued dress eyed him from all sides of the gloomy cargo bay. They were all his age, grim and weathered, all Americans in combat dress. One leant forward and smiled in amazement. When he spoke, his words barely carried over the rotor's howl. "Lafitte?" "Well," called Hawk from the whale's cockpit. Jay and Roadblock reappeared on the deck of the drifting motor launch. "Empty," shrugged Jay. "But he was here," announced Roadblock, holding up the M16 and the Law rocket he had found down below. The two of them came back aboard the whale, joining Hawk, Cutter, and Tunnel Rat in the cockpit. "He's vanished, then?" asked Cutter. "He must have been picked up," replied Hawk. "There's one thing that may help us out," cut in Jay. "Something I found amongst Gung Ho's personal effects in the cabin. Let's hope it can tell us something." Leaning forward, Jay placed the tape recorder on the chart table and pressed the play button. "Well, here goes nothing," she added. Continued next week on Joe on Joe. That was exciting. I always love it when someone goes rogue. Shades of Dusty going rogue in the cartoon. That's always a fun reason. And We got a whole platoon of American soldiers back from the Vietnam War, fighting a fight. Shades of Rambo in that story. I love it. I hope you all enjoyed it yourselves. And that's it for this week. And we will see you next week. Now you Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.